Cool. Meditations on the Tarot meeting. We're talking about death this week. Cody and Britannia join me. Yeah. You really liked this chapter from what I read as well. Mm-hmm. Do we want to go overview? Yeah, you two go into overview. I don't think I can say an overview from the whole chapter, but yeah, Cody, what was your overview from the chapter?
My overview or my kind of overall thoughts?
Okay, overall thoughts.
Okay. Yeah. I found this chapter pretty difficult. And I keep wanting to, and again, it's like same as other chapters. I keep wanting to kind of reframe some of what he says in kind of different terms. I feel like there's I kept being kind of frustrated with like the overlooking the opportunity. He's like trying, I mean, I almost feel like he's trying to take it deeper than it needs to go, or like a layer underneath. But then I'm like, maybe this is really cool, like a deeper layer. But like, there's definitely like with the death card, for me, it's like the theme of impermanence is like so prevalent, and he doesn't mention like impermanence once, like, and maybe he mentions it in a certain roundabout way or kind of like an underlying thing. But so I found that tricky to reconcile with my take on the card and on in general, like, but I definitely started to reframe a lot of what he said, and we'll talk about that more. And maybe I'm getting, through reframing it, I'm understanding what he's saying as well anyways, but I might be kind of thinking of it differently. I'm not sure. We'll see. But yeah, I really liked the gosh, now I can't even think of it. So it starts with what the
three.
Oh yeah, like memory.
Well, what, forgetting, sleep, and death, right?
Yeah, forgetting, sleep, and death. These three kinds of death that he talks about.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool how he talks about those things.
Well, before
and like the opposite of awakening, remembering, and
yeah, life
and reincarnation,
and rebirth. Yeah. And then then like there's this, and to me there feels like he's like kind of stuck in a duality of there's like the horizontal, again, it's like this, there's the horizontal and the vertical, and never the two shall meet, in a sense, like, even though they create a cross, but he's still stuck in this, like, everything in the horizontal is kind of like the serpent, and if you're stuck in that you can't get into the vertical. And I just can't buy that. Like, I don't buy that kind of, that there's like a fundamental dualistic thinking that, like, that's frustrating to me. And there's some points in this chapter that are like that, that I feel like he's betraying the whole idea of unity with divinity, even like the gnosis part. Plus he gets, like, he talks about the Buddha at one point in this, and I think he gets it wrong. Like, he's just kind of wrong about the Buddha. He says like the Buddha is says that the world is entirely broken, and that the only way out is to die. And I don't think that's not really right. Like, so like he kind of separates like his mysticism from Buddhism, in that he thinks that what he does is like maintaining kind of this personality that's like connected with God, while still like doing work in this world. And I don't think Buddhism really denies that at all, especially with the concept of bodhisattva. Maybe it's like a difference between Mahayana and Father Theravada or whatever. No, I'm not getting those right, but anyway, um, where like, yeah, the one path like believes that bodhisattva is cool, and then the other half is just like, no, it's just about nirvana. So maybe he's just kind of doesn't understand the bodhisattva side so much. He studied the other stuff. Yeah,
Cool.
that's my impression.
For Tanya, what was your impression slash thoughts on the chapter?
Like every chapter, I always feel like when I first start reading it, I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to rely heavily on his beliefs, like his religious beliefs, to like get you into the chapter. So I kind of just like grit my teeth through that, and I end up enjoying it more as an allegory throughout the chapter instead of it being I believe this too type thing, because it's really black and white and it really turns me off. Especially like Cody said, like I think it rips in half the idea of the unity in the situation. And I think instead of it being like a cross, it should be like more of a like 3-dimensional like Kabbalic cross, where it's like you're like on a grid, where you're on a grid horizontally and vertically. It's not like just like two intersecting lines. It's like two planes where, I mean, you're at a point between both of them, and that's like, I don't know, it's kind of like being on a map. So I don't know. I feel like it's more expansive than his like flat idea of it. So I think that part kind of always makes me feel like either I wish he went deeper, or I wish he felt deeper about it. To be able to talk or read with him more about that. But I liked his threes in this one. That was cool. And I really liked the idea of a soul being able to like quote unquote like choose the earth by its energy, like it's being called the earth or it's being sent there, like because of like the energy, which I thought that was like a really cool way of putting it. Because I remember like being a little kid and being like, how did I get here? Just like energy wise, like how did I get here? Like why was I sent here? Whatever. And what page was it? I think it was on page 353. Where was it? Yeah, a soul can be sent to Earth or it can be attracted by the Earth. Just like that small sentence. Like I really like that little gem. Because I think that kind of pulls back into, I guess, like Buddhism and my idea of like that kind of like place you go back to, and like everything is one, and like you're kind of like a little part of it, just unaware of it, while we're here, because like our perception and our capacity being limited. But that part was really cool. I like that. Yeah, I think him going into like why the church is hostile about like reincarnation and stuff, and how he was like it's 100% true and ghosts are 100% true and stuff. Like that was a very interesting take on those. I wasn't expecting him to like not address like that. Like I thought that was pretty cool actually of him to be like, those are real, this is real, and this is why they are scared of it. And that's a refreshing take. He like slipped up for a second. I felt like he broke character and like went real on us, which I enjoyed. Because I think that was interesting with like the crystallization and stuff too. I don't know. I don't really know much about all that. Do you guys know about like crystallization or the radiation or the crystallization, like that whole situation where like some occults like are trained to radiate energy or light out, and other ones are like trained to like bring it in?
Irene talked about that a little bit, becoming translucent. Is that the same kind of concept that we're talking about here? Like being a lens to radiate, divine light versus absorbing and
Yeah. The
that kind of.
crystallization was the one where you just like you bring all of it inward and like crystallize it, and then the radiation was you're kind of like emitting it.
So then also what was interesting, the Tibetan monk that I met, the Rinpoche, not so sure how to pronounce that, the Rinpoche that I met last night or was at his talk, he said to breathe in when you're in a group or whenever you want, like one of their practices is to breathe in all the like bad vibes and like bad things from people and breathe out all of compassion and love for them. so I thought that was so interesting because it like flipped it on its head, and everybody in the group was like, well, don't you run into a lot of harm by breathing in all this bad stuff? And it's like, no, because you're breathing out the compassion for them. So it's transmuting it inside of you, and there's no mantra associated with it. You just do it in your mind, and it's like flipping
Yeah.
it so that everything that comes out of you is compassion, and it trains you to be able to transmute that. So I liked that versus like accumulating, because I've been practicing kind of the opposite. Like, let me inhale divine energy and breathe out towards the center of the earth, like things that I need to like recycle back in so that it can go to the center of the earth and recycle out into something new. But he was saying the opposite, like you have that power inside of you to breathe in, negative, and breathe out positive, or breathe out compassion, I love that. Everybody's mind is
That's cool. Is that Maitri
What was that?
or Meta? Is that Maitri? Did
I
they
don't
call it that?
I don't recall.
Not sure. I know
Yeah,
Maitri is
some of
like
them call it
loving
meta.
kindness.
No.
Yeah, the bed of loving kindness. Yeah, I think I discovered that like type of meditation. I was in like high school going into college, and it like seriously saved my life. I would like use it, especially when I was getting anxiety or like getting angry, and it would like diffuse me in like 5 breaths. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Helpful
again,
tool.
I was always taught the opposite, or always like thought of the opposite. So it's good to breathe in negative sometimes. I'm gonna try it on my friends.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But yeah, the crystal
I don't know, Crystal. What page is that on?
crystallization, it's, I don't know, because I don't have the same book as you, but
Yeah, for sure.
but he talks about
let's
Gurdjieff
see.
particularly, Gurdjieff's stuff, and he quotes it. He quotes Uspensky extensively.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of his use of the Tower of Babel?
Yeah, yeah, he talks because he's basically setting up he's setting it up to demonstrate how the serpent, the horizontal serpent plane, is all about like building the tower from the earth to God.
Yeah, the
Right, like
below above.
crystallizing your tower to like knock on the ramparts of divinity. So like science, so and like Gurdjieff is like the occult version of the scientific process. He's just a representative of the materialistic, where like his process is to like create an energy body that survives death, that like maintains a personality, your personality after death, and from the ground up, rather than letting the process be done through the divine,
Yeah.
through the
Yeah.
holy.
It's like
That's
a self-made like a self-made immortal astral body.
That's
That
really
you like calcify
interesting.
within yourself.
So
So it
that's
goes from
Is he still alive?
body to soul to spirit. And then yeah, as opposed to from spirit to soul to body, it goes from body to soul to spirit. That's on page 358. And then he goes into the ghost thing.
Yeah. And then he talks about
That's
like
what
how
he
ghosts are kind of a crystallization of a passion, or like a purpose
desire.
that gets stuck. And that I think that accounts with a lot of like the Asian ideas of it, that like hungry ghost idea, the idea where like you're kind of stuck with, like, you're karmically, you get kind of, your spirit gets kind of karmically stuck in a craving or like a passion. But that's kind of the idea of reincarnation and karma anyways, like the how we're stuck, where it's like, again, it's like that we're gravitated towards earth, like that's the whole idea of karma, is like the maintenance of this gravitation towards like this stuff, this like trying to like hold on to this experience, as like, because like otherwise the emptiness is terrifying. Like we're trying to hold on to material as if it's somehow permanent, as if it's all there is, because we're like scared of the vast open emptiness that I think is divinity, or is the whatever it is. But that's our true nature, I guess, the true underlying nature of everything.
Yeah.
So I think he actually kind of gets that in this book. Like, I think he's really describing that really well. Like, there's like the trying to crystallize ourselves, but I think he doesn't I think he doesn't really get that, like that like grasping and trying to crystallize something is like an impossible feat, actually, because nothing can be crystallized in that way. Nothing can be permanent. You can't actually have material, any kind of material permanence like that. It's like it always will wear down and break, like, and disappear. I think.
I mean, I think that's where like time experiments go into play with stuff like this, you know. I mean, we're not there, but like, you know, I mean, CERN stuff, right? Or like just like because of the time factor, you know, is why we have impermanence. So I mean, maybe it's like in other, if time's not operating the same way, then, you know, there is a lot more likely of a chance for impermanence, or for permanence, I guess, right? For permanence. But at the same time, it's like, just because you're experiencing time in a different way doesn't mean that it's not decomposing in the same way, you know, like, I mean, that's just as like speed of light stuff, you know, like you're aging less because you're traveling at this speed and the whole world's had centuries beyond you. You know what I mean? Like the classic time space travel scenario. But
it's in infinity, and like yeah, like time is kind of meaningless in infinity, right? Because it's all at once. But so is like any kind of reference point of having any kind of experience is like, you can't, if you have the same, if you're like stuck in a permanent state and you're like, there's no movement, there's nothing. It's like, it's totally empty. It's like, that's the whole idea. It's empty because there's no reference point. There's nothing for it. If it's like, like if you want to like have a permanent experience, then you have to have experience, which entails time, you know, which time is like a sense of time is necessary for that, in which case a sense of time is only predicated on change, because the only way you can experience anything in time is through transformation, is through this.
I mean, I think you could put something on a loop though, like it would be more of like hacking it and less of like, you know, going into the natural flow of things. I mean, I just think of the like Rick and Morty episode where, you know, they put one Rick on a loop of the happiest memory, it secretes something, and then they put it in a candy and give it to everybody. So it's like he's living his happiest moment on a loop in some machine, and then, you know, secreting happiness juice that all the other Ricks get to enjoy, you know? So that's like an example of hacking time, of no change, you know, but there's still a certain amount of time, and then it's like just repeated. So, I mean, I think delusional, I think you can get into psychosis states that have that as well. Like you are living your worst day over and over, or you're living your best day over and over. Like both of those people usually, like, you know, I mean, those are in the classic example of who shows up in like, you know, in a psych ward or whatnot. It's like people that can't like go through that passage of time. And is it their spirit bodies maybe stuck in a loop of something? Like, I don't know. I mean, that's what I've experienced in like extreme states of depression, was like, I'm living the same day over and I need something to break this loop, you know? But I don't know.
But that's not really permanence, because you're still referencing. There's still time and transformation. There's still experience of that thing. Over. It's like that. It's similar to just the Wheel of Fortune, right? The idea of like being stuck in the loop and not ever transcending, not ever coming out of it.
No spiral, just Yeah, or not breaking the loop. Yeah, that or not having the spiral.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think. Sorry.
No, go.
Oh, I feel like, when you meditate or when you do have like those really cool moments where you're having like one of those like spiritual aha moments, it seems like you've stepped outside of time and learned so much in what would be considered a short amount of time here. You know, so it feels like you've learned like ages of information, and you come back from the meditation and you feel like you've like unraveled so many strings. So I think that there is a way to hack out of our concept of time, because even in space there's no up or down, left or right. You know what I mean? Like if you go out into space, like there's no up or down or left or right. There's no reference for that either. So am I going straight or am I going backwards? Like who's to say? Like that's just nonsense once you get to a certain point. Whether you're upside down or this way. And like I don't know, I think that's kind of the same thing with like orienting like of a soul and like a spirit. Once you're outside of that grid, there's something that's more complex at foot that is organizing things, and I think it's more spacious than I think we're used to. I think we're all like condensed, atoms, so we're used to seeing condensed versions of things. But when things like dissipate and not even just dilute, but like kind of like evaporate into back into it, I think it's a lot different. Like
Yeah.
even like metaphysically, but physically too. Like you know what I mean? Like it, like the orientation of it within time, which is like a physical thing.
Yeah, it's like I think yeah, Buddhists talk about the idea of like you let go of all your filters and like dualistic thinking, and then you're just entirely in the present moment. And you're just like you're in the isness or suchness, they call it, and it's just that it just is. But it's like time doesn't really matter. You're existing. You're still like a person existing and referencing, but it's like a different experience. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Do you think that like maybe
And I kind of did it.
maybe impermanence is tied to will? So like to put that esoterically, like if you don't have, say you don't have a destination when you're going out in space, then it doesn't matter if you're going left or right or back and forth. But if you have a destination, then you are heading towards that destination or not heading towards that destination. So like maybe the will is like a better way to like ascribe a time like frame, or maybe that's like an esoteric better like. And if you don't have will, which I mean one could say like a will is having the now state, but I mean I think you kind of abandon a lot of, or not abandon, but like let go of a lot of your like personal will, and it's maybe more of like the universal will at that point. But even then, is there a universal will in void space, like in empty? Like I don't know, maybe creation, but like maybe not, above my pay grade right now. But
yeah, I think he kind of refers to this in that like when you do like stop being concerned with your own will and you let the divinity move itself through you become like the divine, an agent of divine will. And that's like and that's something I'm a little bit confused in here, because like I think that's where he talks about, like that's where you become a mage, a true mage, where you're like, and that's where you can actually perform miracles. And that's where he also says that's where you actually have freedom, which is interesting. So like but yet you're still like performing this divine will, but I get maybe you're just in that such vastness that's free, like you're able to. I don't really understand. I don't really quite understand
do you have some quotes from that part?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, what were
I have this ebook version that's so hard to find. Like,
oh, it's okay.
that's the problem with the ebook. It's hard to find where things.
Sorry, Britannia, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I forgot. Sorry.
So yeah, I think that's kind of what he's kind of the state of what he's talking about. Is like you come out of like grasping with your own will, which is like always like trying to, it's like trying to hold on to the experience, which it is itself being cut by death. That's like by the impermanence. It's like the experience is being cut by death, and trying to hold on to it is like, it's death is actually the teacher in that sense, and like it teaches us not to hold on to experience, not to hold on to this world because it is impermanent, not to just like grasp after like trying to make something. And it's not necessarily a bad thing to try to make something of your life and have a will, of course, like it's just life, and that's part of the, but death kind of does teach us over time that's like that there is a suffering to that, to that grasping. But
Yeah.
when you let go of that, you let go of your own grasping, and you surrender to a greater purpose, and that just flows through you. And that's like affirmed by like Taoist thinking, like the Tao, or like, yeah, I think emptiness is that from the explanations.
It kind of almost be similar to like that feeling of when you have like a conscience, or like when like you know the right thing to do and you just like feel it and know it, and so it's like there are no other options because that is the thing to do, and so that's the only way you're gonna do it. Like that feeling of like, for lack of a better phrase, like righteousness in that feeling. I don't know. It feels like you align with something that's like clearly like bigger and has like more of a perspective. Like I don't know. I feel it's almost like not like another voice, like actually like an auditory thing, but it's like something smarter or like better, or somehow like the better version of you is like, no, don't do that. That's not, you want to do this. This is the right one, and you're like, okay. But it's kind of like a conscience where like your thing that you want to do, like you want to be the best version of yourself, and so like there's only one option for you, and it's like the highest road possible, or whatever that is, you know what I mean? Like you have to do that thing and fulfill it in that way, because that's like your highest version is calling for it. And so like that's the only option. Like I don't know, I feel like that a lot in life. Like a lot of weird decisions aren't hard for me because I'm like, there's only one right way to do things, like one right way to treat people, or like how to handle like difficult situations and stuff. Sometimes like I feel like there's only one way to, not like out of all the infinities there's not one way, but there's like a right way of feeling about it, and it just like kind of clicks with me, and then it makes it easier to kind of take a step back from having to like make decisions, because that feeling makes the decision for you. you know how to explain it? I feel it a lot when I meditate on like things that I'm like struggling with, or like situations that I'm like having like a hard time dealing with. I don't know. It really like helps me figure out how to be and what to do. And like I feel like it's a little bit bigger than me, which is fun.
Yeah. And I think what you're doing is like what he talks about is like remembering that kind of divinity, remembering the like remembering God, in his
Yeah.
sense, like instead of just like we'll go back to like early in the chapter, instead of just like intellectually thinking or remembering um like intellectual ideas, because that's what like, early in the chapter he talks about the difference, like how that's just like an act of will to remember just facts and figures, and using the mind to just like figure out, explain the world, rather than
Yeah.
using that spiritual, like that vertical spiritual faculty of like remembering the divinity, whatever it is, however you do it, in whatever way. But like so that, yeah, I think that's what that sounds like.
Yeah, it definitely like resonated, because I don't know. I thought I was like, oh man, like, does everybody do this? Is this like how everybody meditates? Because sometimes it's really nice to just kind of sit back and like you were saying earlier, like let your emotions like flow by like on a river, and you're kind of watching them and noticing them and observing them. And it's almost like you're the observer observing your own feelings, but in like a bigger way, where it's like you give yourself more compassion and understanding, and therefore it kind of like it, like even with the wheel of fortune, it like kind of breaks the circle too, because you're kind of like shifting outward a little bit in like perspective by like giving up a little bit of like the focus, where I feel like science is very focused, like it's like microscoped in, whereas if you like kind of like get a bigger perspective, a lot of those other things kind of become like nothing.
hmm And he even says like you do that and you forget those things, right? And this is which is interesting.
Yeah.
But then he says like the ultimate when you have like the gnosis, you actually remember everything. Like the knowledge is much bigger. So I like that. But yeah, and he talks about like Nietzsche or not Nietzsche, Kant, like figuring out himself, like he like basically figuring out that he doesn't identify with the thinker, like that, like he's bigger than the transcendent, that he's bigger than the thinker, and he likes that. But like I've read some Buddhist stuff recently that's like that's a stage to like transcend the thinker, but then you like but that's still a duality. You're still like watching yourself think, and there's like another stage of like of full awareness, being the thinker and the field, like the non-dual state, which is because you don't separate that anymore even, which
I asked the question to the Tibetan monk. I asked about maintaining awareness through the in-between of awake and sleep, because I remember you telling that story, Cody. And and I think it was in the chapter, right? Or in the book was like
yeah.
somebody talking to his master or his teacher about that. And so I asked, I mean, I think he gave an answer that was equipped for the audience, like he didn't really give mechanisms on it, but he was like, absolutely, you can maintain awareness through a bardo state. Like that state's a bardo, and like you can have it. And that just reminded me of what you just said. Like, I don't know if, like, I think that'd be a really good place to practice that. But I don't know if it's the same thing, but it sounds very similar of like even above that mind awareness, because I feel like that mind awareness is there in waking and in sleeping. But I don't know if mind awareness would be there in the middle of that, because there's kind of no mind when it gets to like you're like passing, like, and even death, like it's like it's going to be kind of beyond that, right?
I've been having a lot more fun with the sleeping and awake like meditations, like going in and out. Like I've been getting some really weird in between states too, and it's been actually helping me remember dreams a lot better and more like real. Like I literally like have to lay there for a second and be like, okay, I'm not on the boat, I'm in my bed. But it's fun to have. I don't know. It feels like it's getting slower and slower in between, and it feels like it's kind of like the feeling of like laying in a deprivation tank where you like there's no concept of eyes, but like you're kind of in this one like sleep mode, and it's like endless like darkness, and then you kind of like slowly like start to fade out of like the place that you're in and into this like darkness, and then you're kind of just there and kind of like washed away of like all the things that you had go on there, and then you like slowly come into this place and just like start to like feel your body again. It's kind of like coming back from like a long meditation where you have to like wiggle your toes and then like wiggle your fingers to like come back into your body. It's been feeling a lot like that, where it's like very physical, surprisingly. Like I really like feel it, and it's been tripping me out a little bit, honestly, because I feel like I still have the memories of the other place. Like I literally woke up the other day and had to like tell myself I didn't sink a $70,000 boat because in my dream I had I had been in charge of somebody else's boat, and I think it was a representation of me taking over my boss's business and being in charge of people's money as a financial advisor and like taking on an asset of somebody's while the market is pretty sunk right now. And so like the boat just like flipped over and started sinking in my
Oh,
dream. And I knew I was dreaming, so I was like, what does this mean? Like I was already in that state in the dream. I was like, damn, I was like, what does this mean? I was like, am I scared to like flip this business that I'm about to like take over or flip these people's accounts? You know what I mean? Like I was it was kind of interesting, but then I was like, am I like what am I truly afraid of just in life? Like what dreads or like what like weird things, I don't know, kind of like helped me think about that while I was in the dream. So when I was coming out of the dream, I already kind of knew what it meant. So it kind of solidified the dream as a memory instead of a dream.
hmm,
Mhm.
So it felt different. So I've
that's,
been trying to work more on that kind of stuff.
that's a,
Yeah, you're not really dying, you're remembering when you're asleep. So you're not really dying when you're asleep in that sense. That's I wonder. Yeah.
wait, what do you mean by that?
Well, like in the sense of the book, like because
Yeah.
that's the form of death is sleep. So you're in a sense like you're when you like maintain awareness, you're in sleep and
Yeah.
dreams, you're not actually dying. You're in that awareness. You're in that full and then again that's that full like divine state. Again, it's like you're just
Yeah.
aware.
So his unity, I think, is like I think he's describing three layers of the same unity. Instead of like keeping them separate the way he like defines them, I think it's like great to start like that as like a basis point. But I don't think they're necessarily separate. I
Yeah.
think that dying is remembering and dying is also forgetting. It's
Yeah.
both, but all three. And sleep is the same thing. Like that's why I felt like it was more of a spiral than a closed circle. Like each one's a separate circle on like a stack. I feel like they're like a spiral where they all kind of interconnect, and that's what deja vu and like dreams and stuff are. It's just memories from one of those things.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I really like the way he like. I mean, I guess I'm not like super religious, but like the whole like unity aspect on like the level that he was talking and like the quality of what he was talking, which was really cool. With like, and especially like in respect to like how the card has him like harvesting the pieces, like that he's a surgeon instead of you know being being a weirdo, killing like dead parts. He's like actually doing you a service by being a surgeon and like cutting off parts that are coming up through the soil because they're
What was
being
he
pushed
cutting
up
off?
and outward. So basically, he was saying like the different like astral parts of the body or whatever are coming through the soil, and then he's like surgeon, like being a surgeon and cutting them off, like
Yeah.
help. It's like
A
pruning a
good thing
plant.
or is that a bad thing?
It's like pruning a plant. But I also found it to be like a weird metaphor. I want to talk to you guys about that. So with me,
Yeah,
Confusing.
I'm a little confused. What he's referring to in that is that um so he's actually referring to that crystallization part again,
mm-hmm.
like the idea of like so esotericists are trying to crystallize their astral body and their etheric body into like this permanent state and like build the tower. And basically death is like cutting, I think he's like cutting the pieces of the tower off that are like
Oh,
infiltrating into heaven. So like it's kind of in so doing it's a good thing. It's like keeping the physical in its place, which is I don't know if I like that metaphor that much
I
either.
didn't at
I'm
all,
not
but
even sure if I quite understand it.
I imagine like there's like like heaven, there's a cloud, and there's like some hands like reaching up, and there's this dude just like cutting off these like ghost hands. Like,
Yeah.
no divinity for you.
So sad.
Not for you.
Not for you. Oh my god. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he also, I thought maybe he represented the crystallization, because isn't that what the bones are? He was talking about how they're the last thing to remain. They're the minerals that they're like the last thing to like disappear, like physically. Like, so even like that's why like holy people have like bones have power. They're seeds. They're supposed to be like seeds for like a new body. I don't know. I've been reading that in my shaman book. Like in every single like shaman from like, it's basically an anthropological overview of like shamanism from all around the world, and it's from like the 70s, so it's super sick. It's got like these first person interviews with shamans, but every single one of them has that like analogy in it, and it's so wild to see
What
that
analogy?
like that you basically have to get stripped down to your bones, like in like their shaman initiation, that that in their like vision they get stripped down or dismembered and then rebuilt, and like but
Yeah.
within like the spirit rebuilds them. And that's how a lot of people like describe when they have like a, you know, like an ayahuasca or something, where it's like they feel like they've been taken apart and put back together, but somebody took away the parts that were bothering them, because like you meditate on those things that like you want to like connect with or change, or like there's certain shamans that want to like be able to heal sickness, so they like meditate and go into a vision on where to find the spirit to like commune with that will help them like cure sicknesses or like help heal people or something. And then they like get like taken apart and put back together with a gift from that spirit, and then that spirit's like their spirit guide.
Nice.
And I was like, as a concept, like, you know, I thought that was like pretty like cool in general, just to be like, yo, you're consciously choosing to like, I don't know, interact in that way with like
Well, that,
the energy. I don't know.
that's like in the Holy Daemon, that's like pretty much what happened to him, right? When with contacts, I mean, he locked himself in a coffin and like, you know, was reborn, like stripped and filled with like rose, like just like filled with gold energy. Like it was like he, yeah, stripped to his bones, like literally,
Like literally, yeah, exactly.
like revamped. I mean, that ended the book was like, oh my God, because he had just gone through such like, you know, what, how long was it, Cody? Like months and months.
Yeah.
Like, it was like 4 months of like
Yeah.
himself through the most torture while he was working, and his relationship falling apart, and like, you know, all of the parts of his life just like crumbling before him, and finally locked himself in a coffin and, you know, got contact.
It's like literally exactly like every single shaman story has like a very similar rhythm and narrative to that. And I think that there might be something to be said about like having like a spiritual experience where you do have to surrender and change and kind of not be in control, but you are in control. It's like hard to explain. It's like the two wills combine for a second, and you decide to like let, you know, it's kind of like when you're about to restart your computer, when you're like, you just downloaded like an app on your computer, on your desktop, and it's like, oh, do you want to make change, do you allow this thing to make changes to your computer? It will restart, you know. And it's like exactly like that. You're like, yes, I'm authorizing the change, and I'm allowing it to restart. Like, you know, that's like the process you have to go through. I feel like that's very like almost like literal what he's kind of saying with that, but I don't know.
The
image was a little silly for me, so I'm like hard.
To bring it back to what we were talking about with the car, and I think this is maybe what I think that to me, like this is a reframe that I want to make of this, because the card itself has what's coming up is plants, but also heads, feet, and hands. Right. So it's, and to me that seems like it's like cutting off the head, cutting off the hands, cutting off the feet. They're like tools of the ego, right? Of the self that you think you are. So it's like killing this self that you think you are, so that you can be reborn as it's like that purification that he talks about, like you're
Yeah.
like purifying yourself from this like grasping ego that's just like stuck on this horizontal plane, and like so that you can be reborn anew by the hands
So
of
his
your
death is
holy
more of an
guardian
ego
angel
death.
or whatever, as in, you know.
I mean, in
So his death
Buddhism,
is
what is that like called in Buddhism? Do they have like, I mean, I feel like in Love with the World, that guy went through this type of spiritual death, but is there like a process to that you know of, Cody? Or like, because I haven't heard of that story as much in those traditions, more like the many lifetimes kind of story, you know?
Yeah, no, it's really just like, it's really as simple as your ego is just keeps you in duality. It's like, it's the dualistic thinking, it's the separation. It's like me and the world, you know, and all the
yeah,
ways that.
reaction.
So yeah, the process is just to recognize that you're not
So it's
that.
more subtle. I mean,
Yeah.
which is something to be said for like it being maybe more, I don't want to say more sticking, but sometimes it's like I mean, that's the whole thing with psychedelics as well. It's like sometimes you receive a lot of messages, but you don't integrate them. And then it just kind of sits there, you know, like then you don't really like, you just got a huge download from the universe. And it's like, did you apply any of it to your life? Do you remember any of it? Like, no. So then it's like, oh, okay. Like it just like kind of goes away, you know, that like forgetting aspect, where I guess like in Buddhism, more like just, I mean, that's just interesting. Like, I'm not saying that everybody who goes through like a holy demon experience or like a shamanistic rebirth experience does that, because absolutely not. Like, I think that experience would be profound and so intentional that hopefully like you would maintain, you know, a practice and a diligence after that, that it would have like true sticking ground. But I mean, I could also see somebody going through an experience like that and being able to like change it again when in their lifetime, or like lose things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder how much of an example like Crowley is in that story, you know, because I'm sure he attained some levels of these things and then did like change his life in like multiple aspects of his life in different points, you know, of
Yeah.
just like the different addictions and different, and then the end going to like more Buddhist path of meditation. Like, so interesting. Like that'd be a good, you know, story to get
Well,
in.
yeah, I mean, in my experience, it's like, and certain critiques I've heard of like certain magical paths from Buddhist teachers, particularly Trungpa. I mean, he sees a lot of it as just being really contrived, like contrived, because you're contriving, because there's so much certain in like a critique of these things, what they say is like you're contriving to build another identity on the identity you've destroyed. So you're like, a lot of these practices that spiritual traditions are doing, and maybe this is like that whole idea of Gurdjieff, like trying to create an identity that survives death, you know, like, so like you break down your like identity here, and then you create a new identity that, and you're just continuously like just creating a separate identity, and you're just continuing the cycle of being separate, you know. So that's the criticism that I've kind of more or less that I've read.
Hmm.
Whereas like meditation, you just slowly recognizing that you're not, that there is no identity that you can hold on to that can be permanent at all, because it's always changing. And when you do try to hold on to an identity, you're just keep creating a separation of yourself and the world, of from that immediate experience of suchness, you know, from the yeah.
Where do you think the practice in the book, like Christian Hermeticism, falls on that?
Yeah, and that's, I think some of it feels like it's creating a separation. Like I even said, like he talks about how he's like giving praise to Kant for like separating himself from his mind, and like, oh, that's a great thing that he did. And But then he doesn't realize that that's still a separation, that, so there'd be that critique there. So it's just another step further of just stripping all separation and just becoming one with the current of life, whatever that really means. But and that's the like simple Buddhist middle path meditation, just meditation.
Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, that's Zen is just sitting, just sit. That's it. No, nothing else. Or certain schools of Zen, I should say, or that, but because other schools do chanting and other things, but and mandalas and all that. But
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the idea of the ego death.
I mean, I do. I mean, again, this sounds like my ego trying to hold on for dear life, but like at the same time, I do think that like I think that in like for meeting the guy, last night, it was like I have such a reverence for that practice, but it just seemed very, very different than what like the conditions were that. And there's such a beautiful place for that type of practice being maintained in the world and having like a centralized location for that type of knowledge and those type of energies to be. And there are some tools that can be used, but to be a practicing Tibetan monk in Southern California, like would just be, I mean, it doesn't make sense in the way. I mean, like he started when he was 12, even like in love with the world. Like you have like such a practice like that, which I mean, I do think like maintains a lot of that. And is like, they were born into like wanting that's their path, you know what I mean? And like I was born to do this, and that like resolve from it's so beautiful. But I think being here in that, I do think that there's a little bit more like I don't want to separate entirely now. I think that it's like a phase thing maybe.
Well, I think like he was saying where it's like the crystallization, I think the strong desires and things like maybe even throughout like reincarnations, like the more you're like, I just have a feeling I want to help people and that's what I'm gonna do with my life. So I go and become a doctor and like my whole burning flame is just to help people or something. Like I think everyone has like callings in the world that or things that they're just naturally good at and so they just flow with. And I think that might be like an echo of those deeper desires within like the soul to just like will itself within the will forward in those directions because those are the things that it resonates with. And so no matter how many like lives you live or like how many choices you have to make, you'll always make choices that align with like the certain characteristics of your, for lack of a better word, like soul ego maybe, where it's like a little bit more um detached from this plane, more like attached to like something more, something timeless, where you're like, I'm constantly adding energy and friction to that while going in life. Because you do have to pick a lot of yeses and nos and make a lot of like choices and stuff like you were saying.
Yeah.
Like saying yes and no. I don't know.
Yeah, and
Okay.
Yeah, beautifully said.
yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, Brittany. It's just you are where you are, and you still can create something in this world. And I liked one thing that it reminded me of in this chapter is he's talking about the angels, and particularly Archangel Michael, and even like the way he's talking about Michael is even Michael has a degree of separation from God, right? He's like he's facing the earth in order to um do stuff to help people on earth, right? It's almost like Michael is a bodhisattva, I almost got that sense. So it's like you can still like, but he's still like very much connected with God, like God's will. So it's like moving through him, but he's still his own entity, right? Michael.
Mm.
And I think that's like, and there's just a spectrum of divinity. So like I think he's got kind of getting to this point where like in this book where like it's really hard to, it's like just unifying with the divine is like totally letting go of everything in emptiness. Whereas like the hermetic path is kind of more like the bodhisattva path where you're like creating this divine vertical divine conduit where you still have yourself, but it's like you're being influenced by the will of God, but then you're still like able to act in the world. Kind of like Britannia was saying about like having that moral instinct and like knowing the right choice to make. Um, it's like that where you are still faced towards the earth to do good, to help people, and you haven't fully embraced the full oneness. You're still like a degree of separation. There's degrees of separation that you can have.
And maybe like remembering that space, visiting and knowing it exists, and then being able to like, be able to create on this plane. Like, I think is still a good, like, one, good thing.
Yeah. But I mean, they do talk about these states where like you are kind of one in the flow, and it's like the discernment, like pure like discernment, and you're able to like you're still able to create. You can still be a like great artist in that place because you have all the materials at your disposal, and you're just able to flow with the materials.
Okay.
It's like a great musician in a flow state, or a great whatever in a flow state creating. So I think there's that too. Like you're not necessarily separate in that state. I think we've kind of talked about that. You're actually like flowing with the divinity very much so, and like
Yeah, it
you're
reminds me of like when
feeling
you're
it.
surfing, you're like paddling with the swell just to catch the wave. Like you're paddling with the swell, and like the swell's pushing you, but you're also paddling, and then like the two of you together catch the wave.
Never surfed, so I don't know. Yeah. No, I can feel that. Feel what you mean. I've kayaked, so it's similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's like, yeah, death I think is the beauty of the death is that it strips away all that shit you don't need, like that's what you embrace with death, those things that you think are like gonna give you so much wealth and power and prestige and make yourself better than the next person, or um or like think of yourself as worse than the next person as far as envy or whatever. All these things that are just these extraneous things that are just holding you back from experiencing the flow, the divine flow.
Yeah, it's kind of talking about like it was like the death is the surgery which saves the life of the organism by sacrificing part of it so that in the world of healing mechanisms, like, it can live on. I don't know. Yeah, it's more of like a mystical experience in a way.
That's what makes me think of your smoking sacrifice, Haley.
Me? Wait,
Yeah,
why?
because you sacrifice smoking so that you can experience that compassion, that love,
Yeah.
so you can have that.
I know. No, I mean, again, this card came at the right freaking time, as always, like it is a major death of a 14-year era that's going through, and such a big part of my identity that, yeah, I mean, this, it's going to be interesting to see, what, what opens up now, because I mean, I know it contributes to my anxiety. I know it contributes to my self-doubt. And my capacity for, I mean, it was protecting my heart. So yeah, like, you know, your lungs protect your heart. And if you're, you know, constantly can't breathe, it's like, I can't, you know, the radiating heart vibes aren't coming out as strong as whatever, you know?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
guilt and what it's like grief is held in the lungs, because that's like a heart
Mhm.
thing, right?
Mhm.
We're talking about like shame or guilt, yeah. We are held in the lungs, and anxiety too, like hand to mouth stuff.
Yeah.
And
I don't know,
and grief, like you say, Haley. In Chinese medicine, that's the case.
That's the case, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I remember I
Yeah.
learned that from you, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna pop a Valium as soon as we're done here, so I can not be shaking out of my skin. But yeah, any final, does anyone have a quote? Because I obviously dropped the ball this week, but any quotes that stand out as like a good final quote?
Yeah, I bet I have a good one somewhere towards the end. Shoot.
I mean, we don't really need one. I just thought it's a good.
Gnosis is therefore the fruit of silent participation of understanding and memory in the mystical experience of the will.
Oh. Meditation, is that is?
Gnosis.
Gnosis. Okay. I was like, meditation. Gnosis.
I just really like the whole like silent participation, so I think it kind of went into what we were talking about like how the like wills overlap in a way. Silent participation.
I like that.
There is like a breathing exercises you can do to help like when you feel like smoking. There's like a what is it? It's a 4 inhale, 6 exhale, and then you can do the breath of fire. And I know it sounds weird, but you get like numbing your lips and you get a little lightheaded. But it's like a really nice feeling that you probably get from cigarettes that you could give to yourself.
I'm gonna end the recording. Bye everyone watching.